So this is one that we just have sitting around here to fit in the stocks to make sure that the fit is proper. So it doesn't have a breech plug in it. We're just going to do a little bit of work on it to show the process. So I think one of the biggest questions is how do you handle the round section? So, from a modern standpoint, you would use sandpaper to go around it, maybe in a shoe shine method, or spin it on a lathe and hold sandpaper along it. But from a traditional standpoint, you want to file with the barrel, and it's actually better in some ways that if there's any minor inconsistencies, it'll iron those out and smooth it out. So by draw filing, you hold the file like this, slide it along the barrel. I've even used thinner files. You can get some that are about half the thickness of this. For barrels that were slightly not machined as perfectly as these, I've gone along the barrel like this, lengthwise, with the file bending to the shape of the barrel. I could find a file, but I don't have one on handy right now, but you just slide it along. And what it will do is it would iron out any little high spots or low spots. So especially if you have a polished barrel, when you look down it, optics are such that it'll show any deviation in surface finish at all, or surface regularity or irregularity. So that's called striking a barrel, and it can be a nice first step. You don't really need to do it on these because our curves and our surfaces blend so well together that I don't think it's really necessary. But it's a good technique to have in the back pocket. And I think on our blog, we actually have a little blog post from years ago when I built a fouling piece that shows that process of striking a barrel. So we're going to skip that. We're just going to go to a file. This is a single cut file. This is one of our Baco files, if you pronounce it like that. We sell these, so it's just a single cut 8-inch file, although you could use 6-inch as well. Baco makes pretty good files. I think they're in Portugal, but they're owned by a Swiss company, and they're pretty good quality, so we like them. So to draw file, you might be familiar with draw filing the flats of a barrel. In that case, you'd hold it like this, just and slide it. Okay. And if it starts to load up, move to a new spot. Get this up a little bit so I can work it a little better. You don't want to go too long in the same spot, or it'll start to pin in your barrel sometimes, or pin in your file. So the chips will start to pin in your file sometimes. So you want to move to a new spot on your file, or tap your file to knock the chips out. Some people like to use chalk, but I've never found it to be that beneficial. I don't think it's that great, to be honest.
Use chalk
on your file to keep chips from pinning.
Wow, okay. Like regular chalk?
Chalk, yep. Just the regular real stuff, not the kind of fake chalk that sometimes kids use today, but the real chalk, like we used to use when you were a kid at school. So it's amazing. Got a tiny bit to do here. It's amazing how fast it goes. Look at that little spot there. You notice I'm being careful at the back here that you don't want to round over those corners. So I'm doing little short strokes, and I'm making sure that I'm keeping it flat on the barrel because you don't want to round over the back corner, and of any of the corners really. So this flat is pretty much done, and you can see how nice the finish is just from draw filing. Pretty amazing. So you can go right from there and brown a barrel if you want, or you can also then sand it to get a little finer finish, depending on what you want. But draw filing makes an amazing finish.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Now I see in the middle, is that just an illusion that
No, it's like if you see a little line,
yeah.
then it just needs to go a little further.
Okay.
Tiny little bit, a few more strokes.
I'm sorry, I'm a pain in the butt.
You are. Okay. You see the line in the middle now?
Nope. You didn't.
Good answer.
Okay.
Okay. So now we have these other areas, round sections. We spoke to that where we really don't want to use the shoe shine method, etc. So we're just going to draw file it. We're going to just take the file. So you can use a flat file on a round barrel. It's not a problem. And if you have good magnification, you can see when you're getting any little machine marks out. Keep working it over. And I would only bother doing what part of the barrel that you see. By that I mean you're not going to see what's in the stock, so finishing that I wouldn't do. Some are probably obsessive and want to do that, but from a 18th century standard, often the barrels that were in the stock, the area that were in the stocks were finished very coarsely. So I'm just working along, and you really see it's not that time consuming. Just trying to hit areas that I didn't hit. And like I said, I have to use optimizers, but I'm trying to hit the areas where you can see the machine marks. And those machine marks are just from the tool advancing. They're very, very fine. The surface finish on these barrels is pretty darn good, in fact. It's pretty amazing. So just be patient and keep going all along your barrel like this.
Too bright, I can't see it.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to see. A polished surface or a bright surface is difficult. And you might say, well, the not draw filed looks better, but when we're done, the draw filed area will look much better and look more appropriate.
It looks more natural.
Yeah, so we'll do some, over here, we'll do some sandpaper blending of this, and it'll look better. So we did that little area. And then what I'd do is I'd use some sandpaper to blend it. So something like leather or rubber behind it, where it's a flexible backing, is a real nice thing. And I used to have some sanding pads that were flexible. Lord knows where they're at now. Found a piece of leather that should work pretty good. So it's flexible, but then still provides some support. So it can wrap around the barrel.
What grade of sandpaper?
That's 150, which isn't a bad place to start. And you'll work up. Like I said, this isn't the best sandpaper, but it's not bad. It'll work for this demonstration.
What makes it not the best?
Well, it's designed for woodworking. It's a wood sandpaper. It's America, but it's good enough that it'll cut. But there's other silicon carbide, aluminum oxide sandpapers that are more designed for metalworking. But this leather is actually working quite nice. You can see you kind of wrap it around. And so it's going pretty good. And then you can work down. Now I'd work down to grits to maybe like draw file, 150 grit, and then go down to maybe like 220 grit at the end, 320 grit maximum, but I'd probably stop at 220 grit. And you do the whole length, up around these beads and stuff. You just be a little more careful with transitions. If you start going around it, it'll look kind of funny there. You may have to go around just a tiny bit, but not much. You can work up to that shoulder pretty good. So you just do that all the way around. Like I said, go up to maybe 220 grit, so we could replace this and get a piece of 220 grit. And it'll leave a finer finish, so we can.
Now, how careful do you need to be with that tail end with the sandpaper going up to that?
Yeah, you don't want to just ride over top of it much. I did a little bit there, but that's not going to be that critical since I didn't do any damage. You don't want to just ignore it. And you'll have to then, be more careful too to work up to that. So you probably want to cut your sandpaper, or tear it to a nicer edge, which I didn't do very good there. But if you tear it or cut it to a nicer edge, Then you can use the edge of your backing. We'll cut this with some scissors. So you can put the sandpaper much more carefully on there so it's right on the edge. And then you can work up a little better. This is one of those things that's not really hard to do. It just takes a little bit of time. So you can do that to the whole barrel. And then you can finish it up with some Scotch-Brite, you know, at the end. Usually I'd use like some red Scotch-Brite, but I don't see any that's handy. So here's a piece of gray. It's finer than red, but something like red Scotch-Brite, and then you can buff it down with it at the end. You know, and it'll really make it look nice. And that's not done perfectly, but it's done enough to give you the idea what you're after. Hopefully that makes sense to everybody. So the gist of it is, use a mill file, draw a file of the barrel. If it's round, it's fine. Files can work on round sections as well as, you know, the file shape doesn't have to match the metal part shape. It's the biggest thing to take away from that.